you know how to fly an airplane. It's easy just to grab the wheel and go do your thing. But you also understand like there's, this aircraft's complicated. There's a lot of things that can happen, and just flipping a switch, there can be repercussions to that depending what's going on, dealing with an emergency. So there are definitely some similarities, and I think that structure, that airline structure, has definitely carried over to what I do now.
Cheers to you, Bootstrapped Unicorns. Welcome back. It's another episode. I'm Josh Pies, your host, and I am thrilled to have one of my best friends on the show today. We're going to talk some really good stuff, but before we get into that, I'm going to prep you and let you know that Barry, he's a mortgage guy, and we're going to talk about how he got into that and made a massive career shift. I'm going to grill the living crap out of him about flying, and you'll see why in a minute. Not only, I'm going to buy the Cirrus Vision Jet 2 by my 55th birthday as a gift for myself, and I've got a big goal there, 12 and a half years to do it. So I am turning into a flight junkie, though I don't think I'm card carrying, nor do I have the knowledge that would match somebody like Barry. So I'm going to grill the living heck out of you. By the way, he looks like David F. Pumpkins today, and he can explain why, because I think you probably know why. If you're watching this, if you're listening to it, we're both dressed kind of loud enough that it may actually hurt your speakers in your car. So turn us down if you need to. But before I get into all of that, I would be remiss if I didn't thank our sponsors. So hirevp.us/unicorns. I want you to go to that URL. We are sponsored by HireVP because we are actually a customer and client of HireVP. What do? They helped us place our virtual professionals. Now, you might not know that term. We're training you on this show to not call virtual assistants anything other than virtual professionals, because they work really hard. And with HireVP, they're highly vetted, highly skilled, exceptionally educated, and they are fully integrated onto our team as part of our team. There is no difference between the people who get paid by HireVP and the people who get paid by our payroll department here in the US. We are a family and we are a team, and HireVP is a rare unicorn in themselves that they allow for that type of thing to actually happen. Most BAs are slave labor. Don't do that. It's not our vibe. It shouldn't be your vibe. Bring a team member on with hirevp.us/unicorns. I also have to thank Viking Bags. My backpack now, thanks to you, Viking Bags, makes me actually look like an adult. My previous one made me look like a college kid at best, maybe more like high school. And I always kind of felt like I was almost walking in my dad's, like sport coat or something. In my old backpack, I felt small, but this makes me look like a dude. And so it's the right fit for me. Fits all of the things I need, especially my very large laptop, among other very large things like my ammo case. It was like, I'm that guy. So HireVP and Viking Bags, we love you guys so much. David S. Pumpkins, Barry Botwin, my friend, how the heck are you?
I'm good. Is that the backpack you carry?
It's the backpack I carry every day.
That is a serious backpack.
It is, right?
I noticed that. So I don't want to carry mine anymore next year's. It's backpack envy.
Well, it's a little bit large, which I need that, because you know me. I'm kind of like Mary Poppins.
It fits your personality.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You're larger than life. Guys.
I'll take it.
I'm trying to roll with you as best I can.
I couldn't believe when you walked in this morning. I'm like, he didn't.
I was halfway out and I came back in. I'm like, I'm rolling with pies this morning. I got to do something. I can't show up like this.
My fourth grade gifted and talented teacher, Mrs. Biddle, Joanne Biddle, called me Mr. Pumpkin Pies my entire fourth grade year.
Really?
And so I saw that and I'm like, no way. He literally went pumpkin pies. I knew it was David F.'s Pumpkins. Like, how can you not love that sketch? But of course you did that. And I am so honored. So this is good. So before we get too far into things, let's just get like the short commercial out of the way. Now, how do you make money today?
Well, the way I make money today is by helping families realize the dream of homeownership.
Right. Okay. And so you're helping people finance through getting a quality mortgage.
Yes.
And so full disclosure, Barry has helped me get multiple mortgages. Family members get multiple mortgages. Friends of ours get referred to Barry and they place their mortgages. And the difference between what I've experienced with you and when I used to live in New York and went through other people is the high touch. So I appreciate that you're not just a numbers guy, but you actually care about people. And it's not just me because we're friends, but when it's handed off to somebody who's a friend of a friend, and then you get that feedback, you're like, oh my God, this guy had me informed the whole time. It really, it speaks volumes to you back up what you say you do.
Thank you. I
So
appreciate that.
I've always,
and I'm honored to work with you and your referrals and family. It's truly a blessing. I'm fortunate. Thank you.
yeah, well, you're welcome, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, so that's how Barry makes his money, but that's not how you always made your money. And this is one of the things that I think a year into knowing you, I was like, you did what? And so you fly planes, but you're not a hobbyist. You fly planes. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so I did. I was at the pinnacle of my career, I was a commercial airline pilot.
Okay, and I mean, commercial airline pilot, like how big are these birds? You know, what companies are you working with?
Yeah.
Help me get a picture in my head.
Yeah, so airline wise, before I went left the airlines for the mortgage industry, I ultimately was flying for Northwest Airlines. We ended up getting bought by Delta.
Right.
So that was Northwest is now part of Delta. For Northwest, I flew the 727, the Boeing 727, and then the Airbus A320 and Airbus A319.
Wow. Okay, and which I have flown on all of those.
Yes.
They are really large tin cans, and actually they're nice. I call it a tin can because it's a giant tin can.
Well, someone used to say, you're out and about, and says, "So what do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm in high-speed aluminum."
I like that.
They go, "Oh, really? That's cool." I mean,
Yeah, it sounds like you're in manufacturing, but yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's really
High-speed
funny.
aluminum. Yeah.
So, and I've been to the Boeing plant and seen everything that goes into that. And,
In Everett.
so where was I? I was in north of Seattle. Is that where it is?
Yeah, like where they put the 747 and the 777 together.
Yeah. So I've been through all of that, and what I realized. I say I've been through all of that. It sounds like I'm an expert in this, right? So I was doing documentary work, and so I'm up there, and I see all of this, and I hear things that kind of blew my mind. Things like, there's one company that refurbishes landing gear, and then leases it to be used on planes, so that the landing gear that needs refurbed on that plane can then be taken out and rebuilt. Never to see that plane again. I didn't realize that there's this giant part swap industry where they're refurbishing and recertifying these giant expensive parts, and there's like lease contracts from part to part to part on all of these planes. I can't even imagine tracking all of that.
Right.
But it told me when I was there, this is a really different world than the real world. Like, and I say the real world, like the way I live. You buy a tire, right?
Right.
I know cars, I know daily life. And I've talked to you enough to know that it was a really different world on your side of the industry too. So what is life like as a pilot? And honestly, it's a little scary to think that humans are flying these things full of humans. And what does it take to be somebody who is trusted with that level of responsibility?
Sure. Well, I mean, and the parts thing you keep in mind, it's the airplanes, not unlike a cruise ship, need to be at sea or in the air to make money.
Right.
So it's just a matter of keeping these machines working.
You can't park the asset.
Correct. If it's sitting at the gate, it's not making money. So it's not unlike a vehicle where you take the vehicle, exchange the tires, and put a new part in. It's a constant wheel. As far as what that's like coming up in that, I started when I was interested in flying. There was no military option. Clinton was cutting. President Clinton was cutting the budgets, cutting military budgets. They were paying pilots not to re-enlist. So even though I had some great contacts in the military, there was no military option for me. So it was only civilian.
No kidding.
Yep. So when it's civilian, then it's really flight instructing. Is the key, the avenue to build hours to ultimately get to your goal, whatever that may be.
Okay, so steps, you become an amateur pilot so that you're allowed to be at the wheel.
Correct.
How do you become an amateur I say amateur, I mean, you have a license.
A private pilot.
Private pilot's license. How do you jump from there to being a teacher? Like, is there another layer, or do you just say, hey, I could teach somebody, therefore I hang a shingle and I'm going to teach them?
Multiple layers. So it starts off your private pilot's license, and then your next rating, if you will, or license would be your instrument rating. So that takes you from flying what's considered VFR, or visual flight rules, to IFR, instrument flight rules. So you're flying just by the instruments, no visuals outside the airplane.
How much trust does that take to convert from VFR to IFR? That's my heart just leapt a little bit.
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically as an instructor, if I was working with you to get your instrument rating, you would wear a hood. So you would literally wear.
Come on.
Yeah. So even if you went like that, you couldn't see outside because, your natural reaction, if you start realizing some spatial disorientation, your inner ear is telling you you're turning, but you're not. That's how what's called CFIT, controlled flight into terrain, happens, just being spatially disorientated. That's the idea of the hood. As your instructor,
Wow.
I would want you to get a little spatial disorientated or your inner ear a little messed up because I want to see what your actions are. I want to see, are you going to look down and trust the instruments and say, no, I'm flying straight and level? Or is your ear and your brain going to convince you that you're in a steep turn, so you're going to overcorrect and ultimately possibly crash?
Yeah.
I experienced it one night. I dropped some folks off in the Bahamas, and I was flying back alone in a King Air. It was just the way the stars were, and I looked up and I thought, and I was on autopilot, and I thought the airplane was in a bank. And I grabbed the wheel, and I literally talked to myself. I'm like, middle of the night by myself, going, Botwin, trust your instruments. The instructor in me came out to instruct myself.
Well,
And
thank
I'm here
God
to talk
you had
about
that.
it.
Right, yeah.
it all
So you
worked out.
landed. Yep.
So as a captain I used to want to fly with used to say, I have an equal number of takeoffs and landings, which is what you want on a resume for a pilot, right?
Yeah, oh God, that's some scary stuff. Honestly, it really is humbling to hear like how grave that could be.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's like anything else. You do get used to it.
Yeah.
It's like I did some aerobatic training. My first couple, and I was flying professionally. I was flying for a living. And I did some aerobatic training, and it was embarrassing because the first couple lessons I had,
Oh yeah.
I've had enough. I'm good. But you build up a tolerance. You don't go out and do an hour of stalls and spins and all that. And some people might. This dude couldn't.
Yeah, that sounds so. And did you do the aerobatic training because you were fascinated by it, or was that one of those like I'm getting me to the next level of my career? Why would you choose to do that?
Both.
Okay.
So the instructor in me, because I had to teach, if I was working with you to get your private pilot license, you and I would have to do certain maneuvers to satisfy the FAA requirements. So we do steep turns, we do stalls, we do all these things that are going to make you very uncomfortable. Extraordinarily high pucker factor, but it's important for me to put the airplane into a desperate situation to you to know how to recover. If you and I never went out to Lake Apopka and went to 3,000 or 4,000 feet and I purposely stalled the airplane, purposely made it stop flying, and I go, cheers, Josh, and you didn't know how to get out of that stall, well then when I'm not in that seat,
You're
your
screwed.
family is in that plane.
Game over.
Yeah. So, it was partially because I wanted to improve my skills. I wanted to be sure I could get an airplane out of a stall, a spin, and what better way than to do them, like intentionally. But it was actually a birthday gift too. So it was.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. My ex-wife gave me a birthday gift of some aerobatic training in a pits. It's called a pits.
What's a pits?
It's a really small bi-wing, really fast. It's like a little sports car, and you just slam the stick. I mean, you just snap roll it, and it's specifically designed for aerobatics.
Okay.
Just like they built some boats down here, I think in South Orlando for skiing, a ski nautique, I think.
Oh yeah.
That boat is the hull and everything specifically. I understand for skiing.
It is, yeah.
Skier, but
Yep.
yeah, same thing. Some certain aircraft are built for aerobatic training, just like the Reno races. Where they race around the pylons. Similar. Yeah.
So when you and I went over to Cirrus Aviation, which I've now name dropped twice. Hi, Jonah and the team here in Central Florida. We do love you guys. You and I were talking about how like if I hit my dream and you're going to teach me how to fly my plane, you'd have to go learn how to fly that plane first.
Yes.
And that came as a surprise to me because I can drive anything up to a Lamborghini. I don't know paddle shifters, but it's like whatever it is. I know stick really well. I can drive a wheel loader. There's a lot of things I can. You give me something with a wheel, and even if it's got a bucket on the front of it, I'm good. And I can do it right now in any model or make. But it doesn't sound like you can do that in planes. And so I found that confusing. And so selfishly, and this has nothing to do with entrepreneurship, but I am going somewhere. What is that dynamic? Like, is there like a grouping of planes that are all the same and a grouping of planes that aren't?
Yeah, so you get into with airplanes, so, there's how the airplane is powered, start there. So, is it a piston? Is it a turboprop, where it's a jet, it's a turbine engine, but with a propeller?
Okay.
Remember back when commuter airlines started getting really big years ago, and
they were all turboprops.
They were turboprops, right? So that is actually a jet engine with a prop.
Okay.
And then you get into a pure jet engine or a turbofan, high bypass, the big engines that are very fuel efficient. As you start getting into those more complicated aircraft, you move away from the basic Cessnas, the basic Pipers. It requires more training. And then you get into something, especially like with a jet, is something called a type rating. So with a jet, either by a classification of jet or by the aircraft weight, you have to have a specific type rating in that aircraft. So I'm type rated in a Beechjet, Mitsubishi Diamond Jet, specifically on my license. It has those designations. Same thing with the Airbus.
Got it. Okay.
So because that aircraft is so specific, and because how it's powered, the speeds and everything just happens much faster. You got to be way ahead. Not unlike business, right?
Right.
You have to be ahead of the aircraft. There are some aircraft that are very forgiving. Ironically, well, I thought that was a 74, but ironically, a 747. I've never flown one actually. I've flown a simulator, but a 747 is a very forgiving airplane. It's very docile. It's kind of like just the big Lincoln. Just sit back and just kind of cruise.
It's kind of a floating whale.
Right, but you still, exactly, and it's called the whale actually, but you have to be ahead of it, because those big 4 turbofan engines, when you push that power up, it's like you can eat half a sandwich, and by the time all 4 of those engines spool up, and you're realizing airspeed from it. So if you wait to get too slow on any jet aircraft, it's not like a piston where as soon as you put the throttle in, instant, right? Jet, because especially turbofans like the Airbus and those big engines, they take a while to spool up, and before you get any energy from it.
Interesting.
So you got to be way ahead of it.
So
that was really mansplained about flying, wasn't it?
A little bit.
Mansplain a lot. So.
Yeah, no, but I needed that because there's so much to it that.
Mansplain here.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah. So I am learning a lot here, but in the true spirit of Bootstrapped Unicorns, what I've been fascinated with, and I've told you this 1,000 times, that not only do you care in your work, which is I don't think flight and caring are equivocal. I'm sure there are pilots who don't care about anybody, but what I find interesting is you have a certain level of diligence in the way you live your life in almost all aspects that I think might be a pilot thing. Might be that you were wired to become a pilot, but I'm just wondering what life lessons you have from all this time of working your way through your first career, becoming an expert at flying, and you've got all of these, these different ratings and classifications, and you can teach people. You are certifiably expert at this work, and how many hours do you have? Do you know how many hours you have?
I lost track. I know when I interviewed.
Thousands?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you've safely taken humans all over the world in giant tin cans for thousands of hours, high-speed aluminum, and I have such great respect for that. So I know it's influenced the rest of how you operate, and I'm wondering if you've got thoughts around what that might mean for you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Yeah, I think I do think that in what I do now, where being an entrepreneur, like we in real estate, the old saying, every morning you're unemployed, right? You start over every morning.
Right, every morning.
There are some that wing it, just like there are some pilots that wing it. I've flown with those captains that, follow a checklist, but have been flying for so long, and, they could probably recite the checklist off the top of their head. I was never one of those. Plus, I was an instructor at the airline. So, I had to set the example that even though I know the checklist, you follow the checklist.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because now in originating mortgages, I'm coached as well. So, that in essence becomes my checklist. These are things that my coach requires me and strongly encourages me to do every day, because these are things that are going to move the needle on my business. So in some ways, when, taking an aircraft from Atlanta to LA, there's a process to it.
Right.
There's a process to getting on the aircraft, to starting the APU, the auxiliary power unit, to powering up the aircraft, loading the flight management system. The airline, Delta has a specific way they want you to run their aircraft. Right?
Okay.
Well, in my business, I had to create, or coaches helped me create, how to run my business, what to do every day. So I would say that is probably where the just the diligence or the, for lack of a better term, self-control of, you know how to fly an airplane. It's easy just to grab the wheel and go do your thing, but you also understand there's this aircraft's complicated. There's a lot of things that can happen, and just flipping a switch, there can be repercussions to that depending what's going on,
right.
Dealing with an emergency. So there are definitely some similarities, and I think that structure, that airline structure, has definitely carried over to what I do now.
And it's carried over. Do you feel like that's beneficial to your practice, that it did carry over, or could you run your mortgage practice a little bit more loosey-goosey and this is just you, or is it tied to your successes?
I have friends of mine that run their mortgage businesses loosey-goosey.
And how are they doing?
It's funny. Some can do well.
Okay.
Some sleep well, like having lack of structure. Pies called me a couple of days ago. Yeah, I got to give him a shout back, right? Where I'm like, Pies called an hour ago and I haven't called him back. I'm freaking out, and
right.
and I think that's part of with the flying.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You can. But to answer your question, I do think it's probably more of how I work and where I'm comfortable. What makes me sleep best at night, even if right now where times are tough and real estate is hard and mortgages are high, rates are high. But what makes me get a good night's sleep, or helps me get a good night's sleep, is knowing that I have this proven structure and this process to continue to follow. You keep prospecting, you keep honoring, you keep staying dedicated to your profession and your skills. No different than flying. Flying. We have reoccurring training every year with the airlines. You can get a spot check ride, whenever. You can show up to check in for a flight and your name's highlighted in yellow, so you have to go pee in a cup. There's always something there to keep you here. And what I do now, I utilize coaching and accountability for that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do feel like it has shown up in the customer service too. It's peace of mind in the scariest transaction for most people ever, because it's such a big number that you're financing on a home.
Yep.
I mean, heck, even if it's just a rental property you're buying, it's still going to probably be $200,000 that you're financing, if not more. But for most of us in Central Florida, we're talking, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 is very common around here. Mm-hmm. That is scary stuff. Yeah. And so to have somebody who's living life by the checklists and living life by the, I'm not letting this go, I'm calling him back within the hour. I do think that's a part of the secret to your success, because it's calming. And there's freedom. Structure is freedom. The people who play it loosey-goosey, I can't wrap my head around. Here at C47, we keep working on getting more systems and processes in place, standard operating procedures, and we talk about SOPs all the time. And once we figure it out, and as we're working out an SOP, it's a little messy. Once we lock it in, we're all like, we know what to expect. And that knowing is very peaceful. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't imagine, I could imagine going onto a plane and just, turning the key and starting to fly and having checked nothing.
Right.
I would be freaking out that something isn't set while I'm in the middle of the air.
Yeah. That's the purpose of it, because you can pull over on I-4 if the engine light comes on.
Right. Yeah. Good luck pulling over
There's
in the cloud.
Pulling over on an airway at 35,000 feet.
Right.
Yeah, you got to deal with. It's not. I love the ocean. I love the water. I know your goal one day is to go. What was it with the guitar? What movie was that? Mike Myers. You finally bought the guitar.
Oh, Wayne's World.
Wayne's World. Right? Yeah. So you're finally gonna take that jet off the ship. I'm that way, with a little mini motor yacht or something. I'd love to spend the weekends on the water.
Yes.
Like the air, the ocean's not forgiving.
Right.
To lack of preparation, to carelessness.
Yep.
Lack of training, no forgiveness in the middle of the ocean. No forgiveness at 35,000 feet.
I would imagine there's probably room for burnout in that industry because it's probably, it's probably hard to stay that regimented long term. And you left the business. Was it burnout? Why aren't you still flying for dollars right now?
Emily and Ava Botwin.
Yeah.
Next question. No.
Yeah. So your kids.
Yeah, the kids.
Yeah.
I commuted as an airline pilot, so I did not live in base because at the time that option was Minneapolis or Detroit.
No thanks.
Great cities, by the way. I've had great
cold.
time. It does get cold up there. That's the rumor. Yeah, ironically, it's funny. Real quick, the year that I was hired at Northwest, my new hire class date was in January, right?
January up there?
Yes. Now for
I know you were born and raised in Miami.
Born and raised in the 305, brother.
Yeah, this is not a good match.
Dude, this Miami kid up in 30-something. I did the thing where you throw the water in the air and it freezes. I did that. Like I did that as a new hire up in Minneapolis in January. But the problem is reoccurring training every year per the FAA, you have a 90-day window. So every year for over 12 years, my reoccurring training was between December and February in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
So you're familiar with de-icers?
I'm very familiar with I was amazed that you have to like spray some spray in a car lock if your car's parked, if you're on the pilot.
Oh, that was news to you?
Yeah, I actually ended up. It was story, but I ended up staying with a friend of mine one time because we were going out the next day on another trip, and he's like spraying the thing to get the car unlocked, and wow, yeah, that's pretty intense. But
that's how I grew up.
Yeah, Buffalo, right?
Yeah, Rochester. Yeah,
Rochester. Sorry, yeah.
Same thing. It doesn't matter. It's all stupid cold and icy and. Ugh.
This is why we're here.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, no. Emily and Ava, my daughters, were born, and with airline flying, you're gone more than half the time. And especially if you don't live in base, if you commute. So it's always a give and take, Josh. It's always, you can do the play, but you're going to miss the birthday party. Oh, you want to go to the birthday party, but you're going to miss your daughter's first play. It's always that give and take. And after September 11th, I upgraded to the Airbus from the 727. So I started flying with more captains that were senior and nearing retirement. And, just started getting this sense of not regret, but just looking back on what you missed. And honestly, I would not be sitting here if I never had any kids. If Emily and Ava were never born, I would be a 747 or 777 captain at Delta, working 12, 14 days a month. Absolutely.
Okay, honest question. Yeah. I know you made the right call.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a parent too.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
Do you miss flying?
I do miss flying. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, the flight attendants has a thing called will fly. So you could say, hey, I just want to fly 20 hours this month, or a 3-day trip or 4-day trip, and based on seniority, you can and necessity, demand of manpower. You could bid that and get it awarded. If the pilots had anything like that, I would definitely have tried it and done it, where I could just go up to Atlanta, bounce around for a couple of days, come home and originate mortgages. Yeah, I would love to do that. It would be a training and currency nightmare for the airline.
Sure,
because pilots have to, obviously, you want your pilot current.
No choice.
You want your surgeon current.
Yes,
on how to cut you open and fix you, right? So. It was not an option, but I would definitely. I do miss it.
So that's a big sacrifice to make a change. I mean, it's a good sacrifice. The opposite sacrifice of missing all of those things with your kids was clearly not acceptable. As a dad, I get it. I would be making the same thing, but it's good insight that your career shift was deliberate for them, but it wasn't like, oh, I hate flying, peace out, this is easy, I'm going with my kids. This was, God, I love flying, I love my kids more. And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs and people who hunt their own kill, salespeople who have not yet made the hard decisions to favor their family and the time with their family.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in mortgages now? You going on 18?
About 18 years.
Holy crap. So 18 years later, you're still in the game, you're still strong, and so the shift wasn't like it was the introduction of a disaster. It was actually an introduction of something that seems like it's worked out really well when it comes to your parenting relationship.
Yes. That was still a balance though too, because I think, I've talked about before, when I was flying, here's the thing, with flying, right, compared to entrepreneurship, the last leg of the last day, if I'm at the correct gate, 0 airspeed, and I leave the airplane with both engines shut down, I've done my job.
Right.
I go home, I do what I want to do for a period of time. I honestly never thought about work or flying again until I have a trip coming up, the next day.
It's kind of this light switch phenomenon.
100%.
Turn it on, turn it off.
Turn it on, turn it off. Now you shift gears. Now you're an entrepreneur. There's no turn on and turn off. There's no 4-day trip and you're done for 4 days or 5 days. It's can be, and often is, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
It's like I always tell clients, our CRM, which is our office line and our text, all that, we monitor that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days a week. Very different. So yeah, I left airlines. I left as an instructor at the airlines. I love to get back as well, to be home. But then I ran into the interesting dichotomy that, wow, now I'm home. And the more I pour into my business, the more results I see, right? The more
of course.
Listen, if you're a loan originator or a mortgage person, you're C47, you're in entertainment, the more calls you make, the more people you see, the more people you talk to is going to do what?
Well, it just brings in more business over time, but it also makes you busier.
Correct. So now I'm getting to drive the kids to school in the morning, picking them up in the afternoon, leaving work early and going and getting them and bringing them back. But now we get from the kids, Dad, you're always on your phone. You're always on your phone. So I had to say, hey, you know what? And this really helped when I got into coaching. This is probably before I wasn't producing enough to be coached yet. But before, I just had to say, okay, when I'm in the car then, unless it's an absolute emergency,
right,
at closing, something bad's going on, I won't touch my phone. So I had to figure out how to still be involved and enjoy the time, which is why I've made this massive career change, and not end up being less present than I was when I was gone half the time, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, because I'm dealing with it right now. I mean, I've got, Bella and Tilly are both in school shows. And so Tilly's show, The Little Mermaid Jr., premieres tomorrow at noon. So you got IKCA. So yeah, I mean, we've had her at practices. Last night I picked her up at 8:30. Her practice started at 4 in the afternoon. And to get family time, everybody went to pick her up because Bella had just gotten out of practice for In the Heights, and Will has karate 3 days a week. And so you got all of these demands, and I try to see karate at least once a week. I try to make sure I'm at least dropping off and at least picking up once a week for each one of the kids, because I'll never get that time back. Right. I'll never get those moments.
Now, I remember being Daddy Uber.
Right,
you're in Daddy Uber. See, they go in modes now, right?
Yeah.
So now you're Daddy Uber. Like, you're realizing their schedules are busier than yours.
When did they? No kidding, right?
I know.
And thank God for smartphones. I don't know how people did it before smartphones, because when I'm in pickup line waiting for Bella to get out of play practice, and there's 18 parents all there, and I'm suddenly hemmed in by the guy's stupid big pickup truck and the car in front of me that broke down and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm at least on my phone with not Wi-Fi, cellular.
Yeah.
Figuring out an email, checking on social, doing something.
Correct.
So my productivity is a little bit better than it would have been 25 years ago doing this, maybe.
Right.
And so it was probably 10 years ago for you.
Well, it's funny because you say car line, and the first thing that pops in my mind is the difference between being an airline pilot and being in car line, and being an entrepreneur and being in car line. As an airline pilot, and car line is up. The kids, cool, some Casey and the Sunshine Band, whatever, everything's good.
Do a little dance.
Get down tonight. Entrepreneur in car line, come on,
yes.
The kids got to get out, have the backpack ready. I'm like Jerry Seinfeld going crazy. Get out of the car.
Right. Do I get to bill for this time? Yeah. You're moving slow and you're costing me hours. Do I get to bill for this time? I bill by the 15 minutes.
Exactly. Being by a huge Adam Sandler fan. Today, Junior.
That's it.
Spun up a little bit more.
Right.
It's more enjoyable being an airline pilot than a car line.
So there's some distinct differences and some sacrifices in the change.
Time is money.
Oh my God, time is money. It absolutely is. When you made that big change from, for the girls, and you leave the airlines, one of the things that's just occurring to me as we're talking about this is that you went into a commission-only industry, which sounds like possibly the dumbest thing ever. Just because
I've been told that.
Right. Well,
literally.
Well, yeah. Who told you that? You were telling me that story.
Right.
It was your friend, the doctor, right?
Yeah. Dr. Apter, Matthew Apter. I've known for years. A dear friend, a mentor. Anybody needs any gastro, you want to see Dr. Matt. But yeah, I sat down in his office years ago, and I remember him when I made that decision. I'm leaving the airlines. I'm going to go originate mortgages. Keeping in mind, he has been through this entire history with me. The flight instructor, everything. So he's like, let me understand this correctly. The year that you were hired at the airline, they had 11,000 applications that met the minimum hiring standards. The year you were hired, your entire class for the year was 342 pilots out of 11,000. You're leaving that.
Yeah, you're in the elite. You've landed the career plane.
Yes. You've made it. You just sit there and get paid for the next several number of years and enjoy. You're leaving that to go chase realtors. And I won't tell you exactly what he said, but it's pretty colorful.
I know it was, and honestly, it's probably what I would have said to you too, because there is the quick numbers. If you look at the previous year's taxes and the future year's taxes on that transition in your life, had to be remarkably different.
It did.
Yeah. What do you do? It's a huge bet on yourself when you do something like that.
Yeah.
What do you do to prepare for a change like that? And what do you do? And I think I'm thinking nuts and bolts. Like, what things did you look at your savings? Did you look at dual incomes in the family and how that sustains? How did you have that conversation with your family and your finances? But then also, how were you inside with that decision? Because I know you were probably at peace on one level because it's for the kids.
Right.
But on the other side of you could have been, duck paddling fast underwater. Like, what was that?
It was all of that, but I was lucky in the sense that, I was flying on September 11th. Right? I remember that. I remember that day like it was yesterday.
It had to be a hard day.
It was, it was definitely a weird day. And, my sister at the time was living in New York. So, I was worried about her and getting to the airport and seeing National Guard all over. And I mean, it was a really bizarre day. And going up to take a trip and then, 3 hours later, driving out of Detroit, heading south to Charlotte. The captain and I grabbed a car to just get out of town. And it was weird. But the byproduct of that was in lieu of furloughing, right? In lieu of the airline putting pilots on the street, which they did. They needed to. There's a lot of airlines, remember, because for a good period of time, there was no commercial aviation.
Oh, yeah, it was weeks.
Yeah, we got some time off. But, once that music stopped and we started getting back, and, I remember crew scheduling calling me I thought I was in trouble. They just wanted to make sure I was safe, know where I was. It was kind of weird. But, after that, the airline was smart. They said, hey, we have a reduced schedule. Furloughing is expensive. To put a pilot on the street is not expensive. To recall that pilot and satisfy the FAA for training is very expensive. At the time, long time ago, it was somewhere between $20,000 to $30,000.
Wow!
Just to train back up a pilot that had been on the street more than 90 days.
And there's no way it's gotten cheaper.
Oh, exactly. So Northwest was really smart. They said, hey, Barry, why don't you stay home? We'll pay you $65 hours at your hourly rate. Keep your benefits, and then we'll let you know if we need you next month.
Oh.
And I went, okay, I'll do that. So let me get this straight. I'm staying home. I don't remember I was on the Airbus, so I'm sure it was somewhere between 150, 100, 200 an hour. 65 hours, benefits, all that, and you don't want me to come to work. Okay.
Rock on, man.
Rock on. Yeah, someone said, hey, how long are you going to do it? I think Dr. Apter asked me, how long are you do that for? I'm like, rest of my career? Right? Well, I was very lucky because what that stay home and we'll pay you allowed me to do was connect with my good friend Terry Dietrich, who introduced me to Leo Hunt, who introduced me to other realtors, and my friend Bill Schulk took me under his wing. And I basically Northwest Airlines paid me to learn the mortgage business for the next 4 to 5 months.
Holy cow. So, and this is 01. Is it 2001?
Wow, God, I'm really I take applications and people remember like jobs in like like road. I'm like, how do you do that? Yeah, it would. Yeah,
It would have had to be because it was September 11th,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what year did you take the leap out of the industry?
04, 05.
04, 05.
Yeah, like right around just post. There was a big refi boom.
Yeah.
And then the 07, 08 meltdown is pretty much around that time frame that I left the airlines and started originating mortgages.
So I'm struck by the decision. Like, there are some people who would have perfected their golf game, right?
Oh yeah.
And it wouldn't have been a wrong decision necessarily. I believe I'm going to go back to the airline. I'm going to just take this opportunity to invest in a little bit of R&R. I'll come back fresh. Great. Okay, that's a good decision.
Sure.
You were like, nah, I'm going to learn in a completely different industry, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around what drove that decision.
I didn't at the time. Age 60 was the required retirement age, meaning as an airline pilot, no matter how proficient you are,
you'd be the best in the world.
You could literally be best in the world.
60th birthday,
you're done. You've flown your last trip. You're retired.
Wow.
That has now, I believe, moved up to, I believe it's 65 now. But,
I think that's reasonable.
Yep, but I did not want to go to full 60 and retire. My goal was to retire early from the airlines and basically have something else to do on the side.
Got it. Okay, so you were prepping for that.
I know what that was.
Sure.
Yeah, but I knew I wanted, typically pilots with their time off, generally speaking, you can lump them in two buckets. Either they play, they have toys, motorcycles, boats, or they usually have some other side gig or other business.
Interesting. So you were following suit with that other bucket. You're part of the group that can't stop working, which only fits. I mean, based on the industry you moved into, that was a good fit for you.
Yeah, it is definitely a good fit. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's funny because I keep going back to the doctors. Like, what, are you crazy?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So then you walk into one of the worst economies for mortgages in the history of mortgages.
Yeah.
How did you navigate that time? Because your length in the industry, I talk to so many people who go, do you know I used to be a mortgage loan officer? Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, everybody stays a realtor because around here, you cross the Florida-Georgia line, you have 3 days to apply, and then you just get your real estate license, you hang a shingle, and you say, I can sell your house, give me a commission.
And Betsy's got her license.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think it's like 18,000 realtors in Central Florida, and almost 10,000 of them aren't even active. Right. And I think that's with mortgage loan officers. There was the great culling of 08-ish time frame where there was a whole bunch of people who had to tap out. They wouldn't survive. You did, and you did early in your career. Mm-hmm. How'd you make it?
I didn't know any different. I didn't, and that's what, like even a young, I talked with a newer realtor that's entering the business now, and he doesn't know any different.
Right.
The inventory, rates, you just deal. I mean, it's kind of a blessing because you don't know any better. So it didn't matter to me, and actually, it's great lessons that I've had to relearn with the business of how business is right now, with rates where they're at, inventory where they're at, affordability in Central Florida. All those things that you hear, the news has talked about, I've had to kind of go, wait a second, what got me here? What things, and this through coaching as well, again, this is about the accountability, it's so important. What things did you do, Barry, 16 years ago, 18 years ago, to get your mortgage business off the ground and going? Right. And I've gone back to that. I attended my first closing last week since COVID. Because when COVID started, title companies said, hey, we're doing remote closing, but then said, unless you are absolutely needed, don't come, right? We want little people.
So for clarity's sake, it's not the only transaction you've done since COVID, because I know full well you've done many.
Yes.
It's the first time you've shown up for the wet ink ceremony.
Absolutely, because when I started, my friend Bill Schultz said, hey, you need to go to closings. Show up. Show up, sit with your clients as they're signing, support the realtor. Do those things. Refer a partner.
Don't just hand it off to the notary.
Call me if there's any issue. I'll follow up with you after, which is what we had to do during COVID.
Right.
Because title companies didn't want us there, or they were, remote closings, was virtual closing. But now with business, how the industry is, what things did I do when I didn't know any better, and I had to do this? And that's exactly what I'm doing now. back to the basics, if you will. It's like
That's awesome.
I would say Kobe. There's a video I think I shared with you a long time ago.
The Kobe Bryant
the Kobe
video?
Bryant video where that sports writer gets to attend the camp, and Kobe says we'll be at the gym at 4. He says, I'll show him. I'll get there at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And he's already there in a full sweat, and he's watching him kind of without Kobe knowing, and all he is doing is the basics, just the very basics of basketball. So before the camp started, when he had a minute to chat with Kobe, he's like, dude, you're like the greatest in the world, and I'm sitting here for 2 hours at 3 and 4 in the morning. All you're doing is the basics of basketball. And I'll paraphrase, but Kobe basically said, that's why I'm the greatest in the world.
Right.
So now, back to basics. What things did I do in the beginning, leaving the airlines to generate business? I'm back to doing.
And so are the reason why you got away from the basics just because of the COVID alterations to the world that we lived in?
COVID, and I started producing a lot more.
You got busy.
Business. I got busy, and it is hard because it takes time. It takes a lot of time out of the day. You try to be productive, so driving to closing and try to make calls.
Yep.
You get to closing, you need to be present. Something that I learned as well is not to have my mind on the next thing, whether it's a phone call or I'm in person. So right now I'm just doing nothing. I'm thinking of anything else what's after, but being here with you and living this moment and being present. So there's all these things that you're kind of knew and you got away from, or I got away from, and now getting back to. So to circle all the way back around to answer your question, I just didn't know any better, Josh. And I think loan originators and realtors that get in the business right now, you don't know any better.
So it's a blessing.
It can be, yeah, 100%.
Kind of reminds me of you ever see that Bugs Bunny episode where Bugs is on a commercial flight, and it's kind of reenacting the Twilight Zone episode with the gremlin. That Bill Shatner and the Twilight Zone is convinced there's a gremlin taking apart the plane because there's it's great. It's like early season 1.
Okay.
And so the gremlin's taking apart the plane, and Bill Shatner's going crazy. Well, the Looney Tunes did that as well.
Okay.
And the gremlin, I think it's actually Marvin the Martian. I think it's one. If I recall, that could be the Mandela effect. I'm not sure, but yeah, he's pulling apart the plane, and now the plane's crashing. It's about to crash and hit the ground. And it goes, and it runs out of gas, and it just stops before it hits the ground. And then Bugs just steps off onto the ground, and he goes, "What? I don't believe in gravity," because he didn't know any better.
Don't know any better.
Yeah, he didn't know any better.
I love it.
Yeah. And actually, I do wonder if there's something, in entrepreneurship. I think anybody who's met with a level of success has figured out, maybe the hard way, that you've got to get into something and kind of grow your wings on the way down. And so, if you're gonna leap. Right. You don't have the answers. You don't know how to fly.
Right.
By the way, you're not a bird, you're a human. So you better figure out how to stitch a bird suit and not crash. And you're gonna find out something on the way down. And I feel like you walking into that 2008, the mortgage crisis, was that mortgage-backed securities and all of that, that crisis, you didn't know any better, so you just had to do.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a blessing in, you were forced to do that. And I think a lot of people who get into business and during the good times, where it's a little bit easier, still need to have the mindset of, I don't know any better, so I'm going to try. And gosh darn it, I know I'm going to learn. It's kind of that you either win or you learn attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I heard a coach the other day. I was on a call, and he said he realized, he's out in California, he said, I realized I was a really great realtor. I produced a lot when the market was great. I realized I was not a very good realtor because I didn't produce much when the market was not great. And I think that's the difference, is continuing to produce. Yeah, you're not going to produce at the same level because there just isn't the business there to have. But you continue to produce through these times, meaning you're doing all those things. And again, it's not opportunistic. It's not, hey, I'm going to get my real estate license, because we all know selling real estate, making a ton of money is a super easy way to go, right? It's not that, or it's not, hey, I want to be a loan. Refis are going to come up, so we'll probably see now.
Lots of refis, absolutely.
Or a lot of loan originators, getting back in the business, because, in an opportunistic way, because there's going to be refinances
Yep.
and it's, easy money, right? So, it's not about that. It's about staying consistent, doing the things day in and day out. It's like, part of coaching, I had to read a book, and it was, I think, Chop Wood, Carry Water.
Ooh, I don't know this book.
I believe that's the name of it. But it's basically about doing the things that produce results, but not when no one's looking. It's, making the calls and staying on task and doing those things, because that will continue to yield business through good times and bad.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So I'm going to do it, but this is my opinion, not his. It's interesting that I look at a lot of realtors, and you can kind of tell the jokes from the pros in how many things are on their LinkedIn. And you mentioned the word opportunistic, and there will be LOs who jump back into the game when the market gets better. And I know more realtors. Don't comment. I don't want you in hot water. But more realtors than I can count that also sell Amway. And they got 4 or 5 MLMs they've tried. They also have a car detailing business. Like, really? Why? They're also bikini models, and which I have a whole rant I could go on with that, because I think that's the exact opposite of how anybody should market in real estate. My wife doesn't want us to hire the bikini model to do the transaction for our property. She doesn't want me seeing houses with somebody who fancies themselves somebody who should be seen undressed, right? So I could...
I get that.
Yeah, so I could rant for a couple of hours on just that one, because we have enough of those in Central Florida. But it's that opportunistic thing that also kills a lot of businesses, where a business owner says, "Oh, I'll chase this. Oh, I'll chase that," and then, "Oh yeah, this is my main line of business, but I also got to carve out time for all my other carve outs." And so staying the course through the hard times and proving your mettle in the hard times is what makes you a career person who can be trusted with all of the responsibilities of that career. That's what you've been doing.
Yeah, not unlike the airlines. I mean, the airlines, I was a dedicated professional. The airline required me to know my craft. They tested me on it. They trained me on it on a regular basis. And I think going back to originally to your question you had, how that has carried over, same thing. It's like we do in coaching the word of the year, right? So my word this year is dedicated.
Nice.
I'm dedicated to my profession. I'm rededicated to my profession. I'm dedicated to help families. I'm dedicated to educate, especially for those that have never bought before, and be with them through that process from start to finish, no matter if it's next week or if it's next year. So,
Nice.
They're very similar in that sense, and maybe that is more, me, but I just think that if it's anything worth doing, is worth doing right and doing well. And to your point, it is a major purchase, likely the most money we'll spend in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And it's like, I met with a young family a couple weekends ago, and he's all on board, wants to own, wants to go out tomorrow and buy. She's like, well, let me think about it, and let's see, want to see what happens with the market. Our value is going to decline when rates go down. What's all going to happen? And she kept saying it's just a lot of money to spend. It's a lot of money to spend. And this is what I love. And this is why I love I was an instructor at the airline. I love to get back. And this is more about educating. And what I explained to her, and they were looking at, let's say $400,000 price point.
Sure.
Looking to put 10% down, that's $40,000.
Which is a heap of money.
A lot of money. They both work very hard, want to start a family, they want to be out of the apartment,
Yep.
They want a home, all those things that many people want. And I heard her kept saying, it was a money spent and money spent and money spent. And I stopped and I said, I think you should look at it differently. Why don't you look at it as an investment in your future? And he's, yes. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, let's look at it this way. If we still realize, which we will, somewhere between 3 to 5% annually for the next few years in Central Florida.
In property appreciation.
You put in $40,000 down on the home.
Right. On a $400,000 purchase.
Correct. In 3 to 5 years, you're going to double your money.
Yeah.
You're going to have $80,000 in equity in the home. The 40 you put in, and it's going to generate 40 in equity.
Right.
Where can you go and give someone $40,000 and come back 3 to 5 years later and they give you 80?
Nowhere.
Nowhere. And as soon as I said that, Josh, it's like a light went on. You know, I think he was going to get up and hug me, but like a light.
He was ready.
He's absolutely ready. A light went on for her, just changing up how to look at it.
Yeah.
And it's like that's like literally, it was a Starbucks on a Saturday, which, you know, again, they work full time, 5 days a week. I met him, and it was like, I left there and I literally said, this is why I do this. That, and I know probably people listening and you might be like, not big of a deal, but just to change that mindset about real estate and
Well,
just
they
look at it
just
different.
freed up their future.
Yeah.
They really did. I mean, so when you're working for a paycheck, you've got to make some pretty smart decisions, and there's some big leaps that are going to happen in order to grow your net worth and prepare for a 30 or 40 year out retirement. Those are things that don't have gravity unless somebody helps bring some gravity to the situation. And I think, though, it was very positive. It's not that negative sense of gravity, but there is, I mean, what you just told them was, if you don't make the decision this year, you're missing out on doubling your money.
Yeah. And you know, and to that point, I literally then just grabbed a calculator and a pen and showed them that in a year, you know, that $400,000 home, you know, is going to be worth 415 to 420.
Right.
The mortgage is going to cost you, let's say, with rates where they're at over the next 12 to maybe 18 months before you refinance, it's going to cost you, let's just say, another $4,000 than it would have if you had waited for rates to be lower. So we're going to wait for rates to go down, then we're going to buy, and we're going to save roughly $4,000 in what we would not have spent in a mortgage over the next 12 to 18 months. But you have to subtract the $4,000
From
the
12
15
or-
to 20
yeah, right,
that
right.
the home is going to be worth in 18 months more.
Yep.
And go, okay, you're leaving.
The only difference is that it might be a difference of cash value, where it's, you know, cash in your pocket versus cash in your equity value.
Correct.
You know, so there are some tangible life moments where you go, okay, well, I can't spend this on the cruise because it's wrapped up in my house.
Absolutely.
But
100%.
the memories from the cruise wane. The investment grows.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Not that I'm against cruises.
Love to cruise. Yeah, love to be
You
on
know,
a
I
cruise.
still haven't been on a cruise.
You've never been on a cruise?
I've
Ever?
never been. No. So Shannon is like, she's warming to it.
Okay.
I mean, we have family who can get us on like ultra discount family versions of, well, it's going to be high end because it's Disney, but they work in the Disney Cruise Line high enough up that they get like, oh, we're going to test a new show and we want people coming in at a discount in case the show sucks. And so you can kind of like, we could go on for like $39 a night per person. And I've gotten this offer like
You should
3
get
or
up
4
right
times.
now and leave.
I know.
Go to Titusville.
Seriously, I know. And Shannon has not warmed to the idea that we'll be on the unforgiving sea, as we've talked about earlier, for a couple of days. A lot of people do this very safely. You know,
It's a big industry.
It's a huge industry. And so I feel like it's going to be fine. But yeah, so because, you know, time is what it is. And they're always last minute. That is one of the catches with this is, you know, in 3 days you need to leave. Can your kids take off school and can you cancel everything on your calendar?
But that's the beauty of living in Central Florida because it's an hour drive.
I know, I know.
Think about if you had to fly from Rochester.
Oh, it wouldn't have happened.
For 5 people.
Yep.
Airlines,
Yep.
and then you know, even if you go out the same day you get in, transport. I mean, that's why it's so convenient. I don't think you can beat it. I mean, of course, not $30-something a night. That's just ridiculous.
I know.
And by the way, my last name's gonna be Pies when you go, and I'll be your.
You know what, brother?
From another mother.
I am good with that.
Carry your
Come
bag,
with us.
tell you how great you look.
Yeah, pumpkin pies. You're part of the family, obviously.
But no, 100%. No, and you value-wise, you can't beat it. Emily, my oldest, who now is in living in Manhattan, but she went on a Disney cruise in high school.
Oh, no kidding.
Just so happens her best friend at the time's father worked for the cruise line, so I sat at the captain's table and all that.
Oh, come on.
But it was the most amazing, incredible experience ever. Like, to this day, if she was here, she'd go on and on about that. She had escargot for the first time, and she just had a blast. Yeah, it is awesome. The kids will just, and Disney's great because based on the age, you get like a beeper and they can go off and have fun and do their thing. It's really for families.
I love my kids so much, but that whole get rid of your kids moment that everybody keeps bragging about, or like they're in their own little dance club, hanging out and partying with Mickey and all of the characters, characters that never come out at the parks too. I've heard them sell me on that a couple of times. Like,
except to cruise.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. When's the last time you met, Robin Hood from the 1974 Robin Hood?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I haven't. Do I need to go on a cruise to meet Robin Hood? Yes, you do.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so, and then of course, that is my favorite Disney movie, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Robin Hood. That's when I got sick as a kid. I would always watch that, and I realized as an older teen that I could say the inside joke that Maid Marian was a fox. Because she was.
Yeah.
Literally. Anyhow, I completely digress. We are so far off the reservation right now, but I'm going to bring it home with just one kind of, just nuts and bolts question about the industry because, you and I both have a lot of friends who have high interest mortgages right now that would love to refi. And what is the industry going to do over the next 6, 12, 18? Do you have any read on what the world looks like?
I thought I did till this morning.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, I saw Chairman Powell on 60 Minutes a month or two ago. Generally speaking, the knowledge, the idea is that, hey, at some point the Fed's going to cut this year. Are they going to do it in the May meeting? Or are they going to do it in the June meeting? When is the cuts coming? Our jobs, we expected 200,000. We had over 300,000. PCE, personal, expenditures are up. Like, this economy is humming.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for real estate and mortgages, when there's tons of jobs and the economy's humming, it's not so great, right, for mortgages and rates. So I think it's going to be like this week alone, market closed down, mortgage-backed securities closed down like 80-something basis points yesterday.
Okay.
Huge shift because the job reports, the PCE numbers. Now, we got to remove housing and food out of the PCE and see what those numbers look like. That's really the true tell. But, it's funny. I have a friend of mine I've worked with for years, and same thing. We were friends in previous life. He has a brokerage, a real estate brokerage based in Apopka. He doesn't think we're going to see cuts, maybe toward the end of the year.
Wow.
Versus summer. So I will tell you, I don't know. I really don't know. But I do know that it's just going to be very fluctuating. Mm-hmm. Good week, bad week, good week, bad week, until the Fed starts making those cuts and we start seeing some permanent decreases in long-term lending rates like mortgage rates. As far as refinancing, right now, unless you have an interest rate 8% or higher, you would not want to look at refinancing. Or if you're looking to consolidate debt, because believe it or not, even with interest rates at 7%, we've helped clients consolidate debt that had a 4.5% or 4.25% interest rate on their mortgage. We've paid off debt and refinanced them into something that starts with a 7, saving $400 to $600 a month.
Sure, right. So if you're looking at your cash outlay and you're paying off a huge credit card and it's at 23.5% interest, you've got a shot at saving money and prepay. Yeah, add your mortgage payments. If you're already spending the extra $600 on your credit card, prepay it onto this now refied mortgage, and maybe you've got a quicker pay down.
Oh yeah, we have software where I literally showed him. I said, hey, if you take this $600 a month that you're saving, just take half and just tack it onto the mortgage. Yeah, it saved him thousands and thousands in interest.
That's awesome.
But again, unless you're sitting at something over 8% and you're just looking to refinance to lower your rate and lower your monthly payment, you want to wait. Unfortunately, there's a lot of companies out there because purchases are slower that are a bit desperate and kind of hanging on for the last little ride here that are really pushing on refinances and reaching out and buying contacts and doing that. So what I do for my clients is every month I just send out a brief video. In fact, I'm going to record it this week on what the market's doing and where we're at as far as refinances. So that way we can be prepared when the time is right to refi.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of this is timing.
Correct.
But at the same time, I think the real estate moniker or mantra is true that it's always a good time to buy a property because we live in a market right now where we do get appreciation of value. So you can run those numbers and explain to yourself that even if the rate's high and eventually I do want to refi, I'm never going to recapture lost opportunity to gain equity.
I was asked the other day, is now a good time to buy with rates where they're at? Is today a good time to buy? And my answer was no. Yesterday was.
Yep.
But we can't do anything about that.
Yep.
And I had a call again. I'm working, very fortunate working with a firefighter in California. His son lives and works here. He wants to help him buy his first home, condo. We're on a call literally yesterday going over all the specifics. And my take on that to him was I thought it was really smart because they're utilizing the high interest rates right now to get into a home.
Right.
Because as I explained to him, that purchase price is set in granite. It will never, ever, ever change, ever. Once you ink that contract and you close, you've bought the home for X amount, right? That value will only increase. Yeah, we have dips and, but generally speaking, especially in Florida, the value is going to continue to increase.
Yeah.
The payment and the rate will not, right? Marry the home, date the mortgage. We've been saying that for years, and it's more true now than ever. Utilize a 7 because honestly, Josh, as soon as rates do come down, and they're going to, as soon as we start with a 6, wow, wait until you see the buyers that enter. And I hear a lot of experts talking
There's not a lot on the market to buy.
Not a lot on the market. So we're talking about, could we see another pandemic type frenzy where you list your home for 400 and the offers start at 410, 415, 420? And then I'm doing reports saying, hey, if you spend 10,000 over ask, it's going to take you 9 months to recoup that money, right? Bid over ask reports. So, and then as my friend Barry Habib said on Fox Business News the other day, something that starts with a 5, and I quote Barry, Katie bar the door. As far as, so like I explained to him, yeah, buy the condo now for your son with rates starting at a 7. We'll refinance you automatically next year, waive all lender fees, but utilize this opportunity while there are a lot of people sitting on the sidelines, either because they want to, they just can't get over paying that rate, or the rates are not affording them the ability to buy what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. So audience, Bootstrapped Unicorns, one of the things that we entrepreneurs all struggle with is our personal, our cash flow, our taxes. It can really actually harm us and our opportunity to get a mortgage. And so since a lot of our audience here is entrepreneurs, one of the things I just want to bring up, because Barry's had to deal with me on this more than once, and we got to next year's taxes, we got to make sure that we're doing the right things to be in position to get the mortgage that you want at the level you want. All of the advice you're hearing and all of this talk should very clearly prove to you that he is a student of the market and a trustworthy source. I think you should probably reach out to Barry and do what I do and ask before you're ready to have a conversation about what your finances look like as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and how to think about getting into that eventual mortgage, and run some numbers and scenarios, because it's clear to me that everybody's situation is a little bit different, but the market is the market. And so you've got to kind of merge those two realities in order to come up with your go, no-go scenarios in order to understand how to move forward. And if you can get ahead of it, if you can today's the day to talk about it, but if you are thinking I want to buy this summer, you're almost late to the conversation, call them now. But if you want to buy next year at this time, or even the following couple of years, start having the conversation and sow the seeds in yourself now by getting the information and the knowledge and how you need to prepare, because there's nothing like coming into a transaction ready as opposed to what I have done with you, and thank you for your patience because I know I'm a pain in the ass, reorienting all of my existence on paper to still tell the truth. I mean, it was the truth the first time, it was the truth the second time, but there's a way to present all of the right information so that the mortgage gods go, I bless you, my child. And so he speaks to the mortgage gods. I don't know if you knew that. Is that because you used to fly so high?
I was so close.
You were
I was
so
already
close?
there.
Yeah, right.
So it's easy to start the conversation.
Perfect, right.
You're halfway there.
The only pilot who spent time with the mortgage gods on the planet can be your mortgage guru. This is a match made in heaven for all of us. And I mean in heaven, literally. So with that, that's my soapbox. It's just because I care about you. And I always say that on our show, Entrepreneur, we want you to thrive and survive in your business, but the business matters nothing if your family isn't also thriving and surviving. So take the lessons from today. Remember your family. Remember to have time with your family and build a lifestyle that actually supports you being with your wife and kids, your husband and kids. Make the hard leaps and be strategic about how you do it, because that investment is what you've done is instructive for all of us. But also, on the note of your family and your kids, call them and get ready for the next purchase, because and yes, I am selling for him, but frankly on this one, I try not to do this on the show, but when I've met somebody I trust at the level I trust you, I have to just say it that you need to call Barry and talk. And you can write in how many states?
All. So,
all 50?
Yeah, cross country.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally cross country.
Yeah, cross country mortgage. So cross country mortgage is the largest retail lender in the country by volume now. So every 40 homes sold, we do the mortgage. So
Okay.
yeah, every state. Absolutely.
Okay, so if you're watching and you're not in Florida and you don't have that mental block that I can't go to Barry, you can talk to him now and he will hook you up. He'll hook you up with information. I can't promise he'll do the thing that you imagine in your head. He's going to coach you the way he gets coached by his own coaches for his own business on making great decisions. So again, thank you for being here, David S. Pumpkins. Reach out to all of us and say hi. When we do this show, we do it out of a labor of love to make sure that fellow entrepreneurs are able to grow. I want you to find us on Facebook, the Bootstrapped Unicorns Entrepreneurship and Marketing Group. We don't sell in there. I don't sell in there. I remind you I exist. I remind you the show exists, but literally there's nothing you can buy in that group. What you can do, though, is we believe iron sharpens iron. So if you're an entrepreneur who's early on your journey or you're late on your journey, it doesn't matter where you are, join us. If you've got a lot to share, help educate and coach people in the room. If you've got a lot of questions, ask the audience. We all have expertise and we can pour into you. That's why that group exists. It's about 150 people right now in that group. It started at a lonely zero. Well, actually one, me. And what I like about it right now, and it won't be that way a couple of years from now, is it's so small you actually get to build relationship with people because there's not that many people in the room.
Right.
And so go now and join that so you can spend time actually growing with some really well-heeled entrepreneurs who can really help you grow. Over time, it'll take a different tone and a different attitude. It'll be good then too. But you've got a unique opportunity to hang out with some great people right now. So with that, I'm Josh Pies. I'm the chief attention getter here at C47 Films. I am the host of Bootstrapped Unicorns, and oh my gosh, I have no clue who's going to be the next person on the show. They're booked. We have more to record, but this is how I roll. So I will see you on the next episode, and we'll be equally surprised who's in the chair and have a great time learning from our next expert. Go and do well in your business, and please make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and join the group on Facebook.